This is an instructional video for multiplying and dividing integers. Our essential question for today is, when is the answer negative? And it's classified as an identifying type of a question. So, first thing we're going to ask is, how do I multiply and divide integers? And wonderful answer is, same as you would if they were both positive. Same as you always do. So really there's no specific way when it comes to multiplying and dividing integers. The only key piece is to know when your answer is going to be negative versus when it will be positive. So I have a few strategies for you. So how do I know the sign, meaning positive or negative, of my answer? And I have two strategies for you. So strategy number one is the triangle. And a lot of students like this because it's easy, it's straightforward, no hidden pieces with it. So I have positive, positive, negative. I gotta pause here for a moment. Whoops, that's the wrong way to do it. Sorry, I gotta scratch that one. So I have negative, negative, positive. There we go. Now I remember it correctly. Okay, so the way that this works is, say that I have negative 3 times 4. I look at the first sign of my first number. Well, I know it's going to be 12, right? Because 3 times 4 is 12. Look at the sign of my first number, which is negative, so I cover a negative. The sign of my second number is positive, so I cover the positive. So whatever is not covered is a sign of my answer. So it's negative 12 instead of positive 12. A lot of students like this. The key piece with this one, though, is that you have to take basically step by step. So if you had negative 4 times 2 times negative 2, you got to be really careful that you go piece by piece. So I mean, you know that 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 2 gets you 16. However, you have a negative times a positive, which gets you a negative. So then you have negative 8 times negative 2. So negative and a negative, which gets your answer as a positive. So it'd just be positive 16. So that's the only piece that's the only loophole with this one, is that you have to be really careful that if you do see ones that have more than just two numbers being multiplied together, you do have to multiply piece by piece. Or take into account, when do you have your negatives versus when do you have your positives. Okay? The other strategy that I have is counting the number of negative signs. Okay, so if there's an even number of negative signs, the answer is positive. If there's an odd number of negative signs, then your answer is negative. Okay, so you can look at it like in the first two examples that I gave you. How many negative signs are there? There's one. Is one even or odd? It's odd, so your answer is negative. Take a look at this one. How many negative signs do I have? I have 2. Is 2 even or odd? It's even, so your answer is positive. And the reason behind that is that a negative multiplied by a negative is positive. Now, I could go into detail about it, but instead of blowing your brains and making you go like, oh my gosh, I can't handle this, we're just going to accept this as it is. And so there you go. Something that I like to give across to my students, though, is how does this work with negatives? Or sorry, how does this work with exponents? Because exponents are repeated multiplication. And there's something really important to bear in mind with this. There is a huge difference between this and this. Very big difference between the two of them. Okay, because what this is saying is because I have negative 2 as a quantity going to the exponent of 2, this would be negative 2 times negative 2, which would be positive 4. Whereas this one is saying take 2, multiply it by itself twice, but then there's a negative you need to add to the outside of one of them, or it's kind of like an invisible negative 1. So instead that would be negative 4. So it's really important how you type this into the calculator, because I have a lot of students that will just type this into the calculator and they get negative 4, which then leads them to be really confused about what's going on. Whereas if you want to do the quantity of negative 2 to the exponent of 2 or squared, you need to make sure that you're mindful of that piece and that you're putting it in between the parentheses before you put it to the exponent. Versus here, like I said, there's kind of like an invisible coefficient. A coefficient is just a number in front of something else. Invisible coefficient of negative 1. So it's almost like negative 1 times 2 to the second power. So that's how exponents kind of work with this. And then just kind of like a side rule too, we probably won't come across this way too much in 7th grade, but you never know. I want you to think about this. What number multiplied by itself gets you negative 16? That's what the square root of negative 16 would be. Can anything multiplied by itself get you negative 16? No. And so that isn't going to be possible. However, I can do this, and that is possible because the negative's on the outside. So again, it's like multiplying by negative 1 on the outside. So that would end up being negative 4. So you gotta be really careful when it comes to using exponents and square roots, but that's just kind of a side note that I wanted to give you. The biggest piece here, you can use a triangle, you can count the number of negative signs. No matter what you want to do, the biggest piece is to know, is your answer going to be negative or is it going to be positive? And what strategy would you prefer to use to find that out?